Alright, so for today's agenda, we will be talking about my vision statement, the classroom problem that I found this year, what interventions I have chosen to correct the classroom problem, how I implemented the interventions, how I adjusted the first implementation to strengthen it, the second implementation, some of the data that was obtained from both implementations, and then some reflection and next steps. So my vision statement for my classroom is this. My vision for my classroom is that all students are engaged in rigorous learning while in a safe and comfortable environment. It is my core belief that all students can learn and achieve at high levels with differentiated instruction. Building relationships with each individual student is key to developing lessons and activities in order for them to succeed. As an educator, it is also my vision to collaborate with all other building professionals in a meaningful and respectful way in order to develop and implement successful teaching strategies and lessons. So throughout this year, up until the end, I kind of noticed a problem in my classroom as far as literacy. So majority of the students that we know are cannot read on a 5th grade level or 5th grade text fluently. With this, their mindsets have become very frustrated. Most have a dislike for reading or zero interest at all. They don't feel like they really have a purpose for reading or a connection to those 5th grade texts. This issue has led to students not being able to comprehend a text that they read. So they go through the motions of reading, but they don't truly understand what they're reading and cannot answer comprehension questions regarding the text afterwards. So the intervention that I've chosen to help solve this problem are before, during, and after reading strategies. So these reading strategies are used for students to comprehend a text better. The specific instruction is split into strategies that students will perform before they read a text, or during, or after. So they are separated by those 3 different sections. By using these strategies, it allows the students to have a chance to connect to the text, what they'll be reading, and to be given a purpose. This is why you're reading it. A lot of before strategies sometimes will ask them to look for certain things or have follow-up responses so the students know what they're looking for while they're reading, so that they're not just blank reading. Before strategies also help activate the student's schema and give them a purpose for reading. The during strategies allow students to monitor themselves for understanding, and after strategies allows time to discuss and reflection on what they read. So the specific intervention that I've chosen to use is called an anticipation guide. And there's a video that I'm going to show that gives you a little more explanation.
Strategy that can be used across grade levels and across content areas. Anticipation guides pique students' interest in what they're about to read and also sets up a purpose for their reading. It can be used with an individual child, in small groups, or by the whole class. They work by asking the students to respond to specific statements that the teacher's chosen ahead of time. Teachers design statements to activate students' prior knowledge and have the students make predictions about what they're going to read. We're about to watch Kathy Doyle use an anticipation guide with her 2nd graders with an Eve Bunting book called Jin Woo.
Good morning. I want to share a story with you today called Jin Woo. And I think you're going to love this story. And I'm also going to share a strategy with you called the anticipation guide. To anticipate something is you're waiting for something and you don't know what's going to happen yet. And what's great about this strategy, what I'm about to let you try, is I think it will get you super excited to hear this story. So we're going to jump in. First sentence in the box says, look at the picture on the front cover. The boy in this story is very happy about this newborn baby. So if I were filling this out, I would look at the picture on the front cover and decide, do I think that's true or not true? Do I agree with that? Let me read it again. The boy in this story is very happy about this newborn baby. Well, I'm looking at some of the clues that I see. He's smiling. He looks calm. His shoulders are down. The baby's looking at him. I'm going to check, yes, I agree. So remember, when you're filling out the anticipation guide, there's not a right or wrong answer. What matters is that you think about what you know and you check whether you agree or whether you disagree. I'm going to read the next one and I'm going to ask you to agree or disagree, and you're going to put the check on your own. When a story is about a new baby coming home to his family, the setting will be an airport. So we definitely need to know what setting is. Does anyone know what setting is? Deja?
It's where something took place at.
Where the story takes place. So let's read it again. When a story is about a new baby coming home to his family, the setting will be an airport. So if you agree, check yes, I agree. And if you disagree, say no, I disagree.
Take the time to read each of the statements on the anticipation guide and ask students if they agree or disagree. It's also important to give them opportunities for discussion.
Go to the one that says tiny babies can send messages to their older brothers or sisters. How about Isaac?
I thought about that one because babies can communicate to their brothers or their big brother or sister by crying, because when they cry, they like send like, I want that thing.
So did you mark yes, I agree, or no, I disagree?
I put yes.
Because you think that's a great point, because you're thinking about the messages that are being sent are really happening from babies through crying, right? So now is the best part. We are going to get a chance to jump into this book, and I want you to leave that anticipation guide at your table, and I want to gather you near, and I'd like you to come closer to me on the floor so you can enjoy this story.
After walking through the anticipation guide with the students, it's time to read the story. The book can be read independently, but Kathy chooses to read it to the whole class.
The story is called Jin Woo, and it's by Eve Bunting. It's illustrated by Chris Soint-Peet.
If reading the book to the whole class, read slowly and stop at points in the text that relate to the statements from the anticipation guide.
They're already dressed. I put on my clothes as slowly as I can. Hurry, sweetheart, Mom calls. Do you need help? No, I mutter. I'm going to ask you a question. You can look at the picture for clues. Where are they? Deja?
They're at the airport because on the guide they said when they're at the airport they were waiting for the baby.
So the anticipation guide said, when a story is about a new baby coming home to his family, the setting will be an airport. Is the setting always an airport? Why not? Maya?
Because usually when people are getting a baby, it comes out of their tummy.
And the setting might be what in that case?
In the hospital.
In the hospital. Okay, so not always, but sometimes. Let's keep reading. I don't think that's the right one, I say, hoping. Maybe they'll send him back.
An anticipation guide is mainly a pre-reading strategy. Here, you'll see Kathy incorporate other reading strategies, like turn and talk, that she has her students use when they're sharing a book.
My stomach hurts. How do you think the boy's feeling about the baby, Deja?
I'm not happy about this, and I do not want a baby in this house.
Why do you think?
Because how he was talking and how he was thinking.
I'm going to ask you in a minute to turn and talk to someone, but I have a question for you, and I want you to think about it first. Is this boy ever going to change his mind about this baby? Think about it first. Put your thumb up when you feel like you have an answer. And why do you think that? Okay, I want you to turn and talk to somebody else about this.
Incorporating discussion into the reading engages students and encourages independent thinking.
It's going to change his mind when at the end or in the middle. Yeah, the top of the picture of, the book cover has a picture of the little boy smiling, holding the baby, and that kind of makes me feel like he's going to start to like it once he gets used to
Give students the chance to share their ideas with the whole class.
Does anyone want to share what they talked about with their partner and share some of your thinking? Maya?
Me and Virginia agreed that he would change his mind because we saw on the front cover that he's holding the baby and he's smiling, and that's why we think in the middle or in the end he's gonna change his mind.
So you're using picture clues to help your thinking along, right?
Yes.
You're using some of the clues.
Once the story is over, review the statements on the anticipation guide with the class and discuss any important themes.
So remember that we started with this anticipation guide and we had some idea about what the story was going to be about, but there definitely were some things that changed along the way, didn't they, with our thinking? And that happens with stories, especially when we have the ideas of our friends with us, right, along the way, when we talk about what books with our friends. Kanaisha?
I wanted to tell you that he really did get really into the baby and like the baby.
He did. He came around and he changed, and characters often do change in stories.
When using an anticipation guide, I'd encourage teachers to think very carefully about the statements that they put on. You want to choose ones that will give the students and you something to talk about as you're working your way through your book. Anticipation guides are a great strategy. Use them before you read, but I think you'll find yourself referring back to them during your reading and after your reading too.
So now that we've watched the video on anticipation guides, I'm going to discuss what I did to implement the first time for anticipation guides. So students were given an anticipation guide to complete as a before reading strategy. So this is an example of the template that I used. It has a spot for them to agree or to disagree, and then a statement about the topic. So for the statements part, we use this with our social studies curriculum, and the chapter came with specific statements for each chapter, and I put those in there for each student. So before they read, they had to say, did they agree or disagree with the statement? With this implementation, students were fully engaged while completing the anticipation guide, and then they could answer some of the comprehension questions after at a higher rate than with the previous textbook chapters, but not above 80% altogether, which was my goal. So overall, we did see an increase in comprehension. The students had a statement or topic that they were looking for while they were reading compared to just starting off reading. So some adjustments that I made after implementation 1. Like I said, the comprehension rate questions did improve, but they were not to the accuracy level that I had hoped for. So I decided to include a new section on the anticipation guide for evidence to go along with each statement and column for reflection after reading. So in the video, it was a younger class that they use the anticipation guides with. So for 5th grade, I felt like the students are more than capable of finding evidence from the text to support whether they agreed or disagreed with the statement. And this also then made the anticipation guide into a during reading strategy as well. And this also allowed students optimal opportunities to comprehend what they're reading throughout the entirety. So for implementation number 2, this is the template that students were given this time. So we did use this one with the next chapter. It has a spot for them before to agree or disagree. And then number 1 up there is where I would put the statement, and then they would have to put their evidence right below it. And then after, they would discuss with their table partners if they agreed or disagreed and why. So with this implementation, I noticed that students, again, were fully engaged while completing the anticipation guide during all parts of the text. So not just at the beginning. And students could answer the comprehension questions for this chapter at a higher rate than the previous chapter. So some implementation data. The first assessment was the first chapter that we used the anticipation guides with, and the second one was the chapter after that. So you can see that out of the 4 questions, assessment number 1 was not the 80-100% mark for most students. And if you look at assessment 2, it's still not all students were able to get 80% or higher, but there is a greater number of students who had higher mastery of the questions on assessment 2 while using the anticipation guides for the entire text. So some reflections and next steps. I do believe that these anticipation guides worked very well and were successful for my students, using them as a before, during, and after reading strategy. It gave the students a purpose for reading, and they were able to make multiple connections to the text that allowed them to comprehend it better. Next step in the process, I would like to implement different kinds of reading strategies other than just anticipation guides. These would include concept maps, jigsaws, paragraph shrinking, story sequence, think alouds, think pair shares, question answer relationships, and there's many more as well. The anticipation guides were one specific type of intervention and strategy, and there are more. I just felt like for the content and curriculum that we are working on, anticipation guides were our best intervention to be used. I think, yes. So that is all that I have for my presentation.